Alien commanders panicked as a human crushed a planet-sized beast with his fists, reaches its breathtaking peak, when Jackhammer, using gravitational anchors to enhance his strength, hurls himself onto the colossal creature's chest. With conventional weapons useless, he locates the pulsing energy core and, in a desperate final act, drives his enhanced fist directly into the crystalline heart, shattering the nucleus and unleashing golden transformation. The Viridius galaxy shimmered like a jewel against the inky blackness of space, its spiral arms glittering with the light of billions of stars. Among them, the Asterian star system stood out, a confederation of 27 worlds united under the banner of technological superiority and military might. For centuries, the alien commanders of Asterion had maintained their dominance through strategic alliances and occasional displays of overwhelming force. John Jackhammer Reyes stared out the viewport of the Nova Vanguard, Earth's premier exploration vessel and the first human-built ship accepted into Asterion's elite reconnaissance fleet. His calloused hands pressed against the transparent aluminum as he traced the outline of distant stars with his index finger. At 42, with salt and pepper hair, cropped military short, and eyes that had seen too much death, Jack was considered ancient by combat standards, but invaluable as a spaceship engineer. Admiring the view again, Jackhammer? Captain Eliza Wright's voice pulled him from his reverie. She was the only other human aboard, commanding Earth's interests with the diplomatic precision of a neurosurgeon. Just wondering how we got here, Jack replied, not turning from the viewport. 10 years ago, we were still fighting for recognition as a spacefaring species. Now we're building joint patrol vessels. Don't let Commander Thalos hear you sounding so sentimental. Wright cautioned with a smirk. The Asterians already think humans are ruled by emotions rather than logic. Jack snorted. That's rich coming from a species that decorates their warships with ancestral blood patterns. The Nova Vanguard had been en route to the outer colonies for nearly 3 weeks. Standard Earth time. The year 2473 marked humanity's 51st year as members of the Asterian Confederation, junior members, as they were constantly reminded. Earth had brought little to the alliance except for what the commanders called biological innovation, the uncanny human ability to solve problems through unorthodox methods. Jack had been one of the first humans recruited for joint military operations, before an ambush on Proxima Centauri III left him the sole survivor of his squad. The nightmares still came, faces of his team burning away in plasma fire, their screams cutting off as vacuum claimed them. After rehabilitation, he'd traded his combat armor for an engineer's toolkit, swearing never again to lead others into death. The Nova Vanguard's mission was straightforward: patrol the border regions, demonstrate Asterian-Earth cooperation, and investigate anomalous readings. Nothing that should trigger combat protocols. Jack's personal quarters were Spartan: a narrow bunk, a workstation for technical drawings, and a single shelf holding his few possessions. Most prominent was a jagged piece of metallic ore, a fragment from Tarsus Fur, the mining colony, where local inhabitants had pulled him from the wreckage of his escape pod after the Proxima disaster. He owed them his life, and the stone served as a reminder of debts unpaid. The ship's alert system blared without warning, pulsing red through the cabin. Jack instinctively reached for a weapon that was no longer there, then cursed his reflexes. 10 years out of combat, and his body still remembered. "All senior personnel to the command deck," announced the ship's AI in its flat, synthesized voice. "Priority communication incoming." When Jack arrived at the command deck, the atmosphere was tense. The Asterian officers stood rigidly at their stations, their elongated fingers dancing over holographic interfaces. Commander Mira Thalos, the ship's Asterian commander, dominated the center platform. Her species' characteristic iridescent scales shimmered under the emergency lighting, and her 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern, narrowed as Jack entered. "Engineer Reyes," she acknowledged with customary formality. We've received a distress signal from Helios 7, an Asterian mining outpost on the edge of the Cygnus Arm. The main view screen flickered to life, displaying a panicked Asterian officer. Static interrupted the transmission, but the fear in the alien's voice transcended species barriers. Duh. Massive life form approaching, unlike anything in records. Mining facility destroyed. Evacuation impossible. The Mars beast comes. Energy readings off scale. Request immediate military intervention. The transmission ended abruptly, with an image that sent a chill down Jack's spine. A mountain-sized creature. Vaguely reptilian, but with a geological quality to its scales. As though carved from the planet itself. Its maw glowed with internal fire, and where it moved, the ground liquefied. "Mars beast?" Captain Wright questioned. "Is that a proper classification?" Commander Thalas's mandibles clicked in what Jack had learned was irritation. A colloquialism. Some of the outer colonies still refer to ancient Earth mythology for categorization. This creature apparently resembles your planet's god of war. Red, destructive, unstoppable. "Assessment," demanded Admiral Gentok, the highest-ranking Asterian officer aboard, his voice rumbling from deep within his chest cavity. "Helios 7 is rich in tacronium deposits," Commander Thalas replied. "Essential for temporal stabilizers. If the mining facility is destroyed, it will set back production of next-generation warp drives by decades." Jack noticed how quickly the conversation had turned from potential casualties to resource implications. Typical Asterian pragmatism. The Nova Vanguard is the closest vessel with military capabilities. Admiral Gentok decided. "We will divert immediately to Helios 7. Prepare battle simulations based on the limited data available." As the Asterian officers dispersed to their battle stations, Jack found himself lingering on the image of the creature frozen on the view screen. Something about its eyes, if those glowing red orbs could be called eyes, suggested intelligence rather than bestial rage. "You see it too," Captain Wright murmured, standing beside him. "That's not just an animal." "No," Jack agreed. "But I'm more concerned about what happens when we reach Helios 7. The Nova Vanguard is an exploration vessel with defensive capabilities, not a battleship. If that thing is as big as it looks." "The Asterians have always valued technological superiority over brute force," Wright replied. "They'll have a plan that doesn't involve direct confrontation." Jack wasn't convinced, but kept his thoughts to himself. He'd seen the Asterians miscalculate before, usually when facing an enemy that didn't play by conventional rules. And nothing about this Mars beast suggested it would respect the sophisticated strategies of Asterian warfare. The Nova Vanguard adjusted course, accelerating to maximum warp. As the stars stretched into streaks of light outside the viewports, Jack returned to his quarters to review the scant data on Helios 7, a small, rocky world with minimal atmosphere, primarily valuable for its mineral deposits. Indigenous life was limited to extremophile bacteria and simple multicellular organisms in the subterranean water tables. Or so they had thought. The journey to Helios 7 took 26 hours. During that time, 3 more distress calls arrived, each more desperate than the last. The final transmission showed the creature absorbing an entire defensive outpost, the energy weapons discharging harmlessly against its armored hide. Admiral Gentok summoned the senior staff to the command deck as they entered the Helios system. Jack had expected to be excluded, but the Admiral had specifically requested his presence. "Engineer Reyes," the Admiral addressed him directly. "Your species has a reputation for unconventional problem-solving. I want your assessment of the situation." Jack studied the tactical display. The Mars beast had grown since the first transmission, now measuring nearly 8 kilometers from head to tail. It moved with deliberate purpose toward the main mining complex, leaving a trail of molten rock in its wake. "With respect, Admiral, I'm an engineer, not a xenobiologist," Jack began. "I am aware of your current designation," The Admiral interrupted. I am also aware of your combat record on Proxima Centauri III. You survived an encounter that killed 23 others, including 6 Asterian elite guards. Jack's jaw tightened. That was different. We were fighting mercenaries, not a planet-sized monster. The principle remains, Admiral Gentok insisted. You improvised when conventional tactics failed. That ability may prove valuable here. Before Jack could protest further, the tactical officer reported, Admiral, we're detecting energy fluctuations from the creature. It appears to be feeding on the tacronium deposits. That explains the growth, Commander Thalos interjected. Tacronium can accelerate biological processes when properly harnessed. Options? Admiral Gentok demanded. Orbital bombardment, suggested the weapons officer immediately. Maximum yield. Target its apparent sensory organs. Negative, countered Commander Thalos. The resulting explosion could destabilize the tacronium deposits. We need to neutralize the threat without destroying the resource. We could attempt communication, offered Dr. Lana Cortez, the ship's xenobiologist. Unlike the Asterians, with their rigid posture and metallic body ornamentation, Dr. Cortez wore her dark hair in a simple ponytail and favored practical jumpsuits over ceremonial attire. If it possesses intelligence, perhaps we can reason with it. Admiral Gentok's upper eyes narrowed, a sign of skepticism. Proceed with your attempt, Dr. Cortez, but I will not delay military action while you conduct experiments. The Admiral turned to Jack again. Engineer Reyes, you will join the landing party. Your experience may provide insight. Jack wanted to refuse. His position as engineer didn't require planetary excursions, especially not against unknown threats. But the memory of the Tarsus IV fragment in his quarters, the debt unpaid, silenced his objection. Yes, Admiral, he said instead. The landing party assembled in the shuttle bay. 12 Asterian soldiers in their chitinous battle armor, Dr. Cortez with her array of sensory equipment, and Jack, who had been issued a standard environment suit but no weapons. Captain Wright intercepted him before he boarded the shuttle. This isn't your fight, Jack, she said quietly. You don't owe them this. Jack adjusted his environment suit seals. Maybe not, but I do owe the people of Helios 7. They're colonists, just like Tarsus IV. Wright's expression softened. Just come back in one piece. Earth needs representatives who understand engineering, not just politics. The descent to Helios 7 was turbulent. The creature's movements had disrupted the planet's already unstable tectonic structure, causing atmospheric disturbances that buffeted the shuttle violently. Through breaks in the cloud cover, Jack caught glimpses of devastation, crater-like footprints filled with magma, mining facilities reduced to twisted metal, evacuation ships trying desperately to achieve escape velocity. They landed 3 kilometers from the creature's position, on a relatively stable plateau overlooking the main mining complex. Jack was the last to disembark, taking in the hellish landscape. The air shimmered with heat, and the ground trembled continuously beneath their feet. Commander Thalos had assumed direct control of the landing party. Deploy perimeter sensors. Establish defensive positions. Dr. Cortez, you have 20 minutes to attempt communication before we proceed with attack protocols. The Asterian soldiers moved with practiced precision, their four-armed forms allowing them to simultaneously set up equipment and maintain defensive postures. Jack followed Dr. Cortez to her mobile laboratory, a compact unit that unfolded from a single crate. What exactly are you planning to say to that thing? Jack asked, as he helped calibrate her transmission array. Dr. Cortez's dark eyes reflected determination. All sentient life communicates in some form. The question is finding the right frequency, the right pattern. If this creature has evolved to process tacronium, it might perceive reality differently, perhaps even perceive time non-linearly. Jack glanced toward the horizon, where the creature's massive form was now visible. It moved methodically, its scales reflecting the red sunlight like burnished copper. With each step, the ground shook, and plumes of dust rose into the atmosphere. "I don't think we have time for theoretical xenolinguistics," Jack muttered. Dr. Cortez activated her equipment, sending out modulated energy pulses across multiple frequencies. "Sometimes understanding is our only weapon," jackhammer. For 15 tense minutes, Dr. Cortez attempted to establish contact. The creature gave no indication of receiving or comprehending the signals. It continued its inexorable approach toward the mining complex, now less than a kilometer away. Commander Thalos strode over, her armor gleaming. "Time is up, Doctor. Your attempt has failed." "We need more time," Dr. Cortez insisted. "It may be processing our communication at a different temporal rate." "Negative. We proceed with the attack." Commander Thalos turned to her troops. "Deploy heavy weapons. Target the creature's locomotive structures first. If we can immobilize it, we can study it at our leisure." The Asterian soldiers activated their position, revealing artillery pieces that had been disguised as environmental equipment. Jack recognized the design: phase disruptors capable of destabilizing molecular bonds. Against conventional targets, they were devastatingly effective. The first salvo launched with a high-pitched whine, energy projectiles arcing toward the creature. They impacted its scales in a spectacular display of light and sound, and accomplished nothing. The creature didn't even pause. "Increase power," Commander Thalos ordered. "All units, continuous fire." The second barrage was more intense, the combined output of all 12 weapons creating a sustained beam that would have vaporized a small moon. The creature's outer scales glowed red-hot, but remained intact. Worse, the attack had attracted its attention. It turned, those eerie red eyes focusing on their position, and changed course directly toward them. "Fall back to secondary positions," Commander Thalos commanded, her voice still steady despite the clear failure of their primary strategy. "Deploy armored vehicles." From the shuttle's cargo bay emerged 3 tank-like vehicles, each mounted with even more powerful weapons. Jack recognized their design as well: Asterian behemoths, virtually indestructible against conventional forces. The vehicles surged forward, forming a triangle formation between the landing party and the approaching creature. The ground trembled more violently now, rocks splitting and magma seeping through new fissures. The creature accelerated, moving with surprising speed for its enormous size. The lead behemoth fired its main cannon, a concentrated stream of antimatter particles that could punch through planetary crusts. The beam struck the creature's chest, creating a momentary dimple in its armored hide. The creature roared, a sound so profound it seemed to resonate from the planet's core, and brought one massive limb down on the behemoth. The vehicle, along with its 3-person crew, was instantly flattened into the molten ground. "Evacuation protocols!" Commander Thalos shouted. "Return to the shuttle!" The remaining behemoths provided covering fire as the landing party retreated. Dr. Cortez frantically packed her equipment, but Jack stood transfixed. Something about the creature's movement pattern had changed. It wasn't just attacking blindly. It was hurting them, cutting off their escape route to the shuttle. "It's intelligent," Jack murmured, "and it's angry." A second behemoth exploded as the creature's fiery breath engulfed it. The shuttle pilot, panicking, initiated launch sequence prematurely. Jack watched their escape route rise into the sky without them. "Pilot Shenkar, return immediately!" Commander Thalos roared into her communicator. "That is a direct order." But the shuttle continued to ascend, soon disappearing into the cloud cover. The landing party was stranded, with a mountain-sized monster bearing down on them, and their most powerful weapons proving ineffective. The final behemoth positioned itself between the creature and the group, its weapons firing continuously in a desperate delaying action. Commander Thalos gathered the survivors, 5 Asterian soldiers, Dr. Cortez, and Jack. "We retreat to the mining complex," she decided. The main shaft reaches 15 kilometers deep. We can use the emergency shelters until extraction is possible. Jack shook his head. That thing is after the tachronium. The mining complex is exactly where it's headed. Do you have an alternative suggestion, Engineer Reyes? Commander Thalos's tone was icy. Jack studied the creature as it methodically destroyed the last behemoth. Its movements were powerful but precise, suggesting a musculature similar to Earth reptiles despite its massive size. And where the antimatter beam had struck, there was a slight discoloration, not damage, but perhaps increased heat. Yes, Jack said, an idea forming. I do have a suggestion. Let me approach it alone. Absolutely not, Dr. Cortez interjected. That's suicide. Not necessarily, Jack countered. It's intelligent, and it's been attacked repeatedly, but it hasn't seen a human before. I might register as something different. The psychological projection of a death wish is not a tactical advantage. Engineer Reyes, Commander Thalos stated flatly. Jack's patience snapped. With all due respect, Commander, your tactical advantages are currently scattered across half a kilometer of molten rock. We have no weapons that can harm it. No way off this planet, and approximately 3 minutes before that thing reaches us. Unless you have a better idea hidden in your four-armed battle plan, I suggest you let me try. The commander's upper eyes blinked rapidly, a sign of intense calculation. Very well. You have 2 minutes to demonstrate results before we proceed with full retreat. Jack stripped off the bulkier components of his environment suit, keeping only the breathing apparatus. The planet's heat was nearly unbearable, but he needed mobility more than protection. From his utility belt, he removed 2 devices, gravitational anchors designed for emergency repairs in zero-G environments. What are you planning? Dr. Cortez asked, her expression torn between scientific curiosity and human concern. Something stupid, Jack admitted. If I don't make it back, tell Captain Wright I finally paid my debt. Before anyone could respond, Jack activated the anchors, attaching 1 to each boot. The devices would multiply the impact force of his movements, originally intended to drive repair spikes into hull materials. He had never tested them for combat applications, but theoretical physics didn't care about intended use. Jack sprinted toward the creature, each footfall amplified by the anchors to create small impact craters. The sensation was like running with lead weights that somehow made him faster rather than slower. Conservation of energy turned inside out. The creature noticed his approach, those glowing red eyes tracking his movement. It paused in its destruction of the behemoth wreckage, head tilting in what Jack hoped was curiosity rather than targeting. That's right, Jack muttered through gritted teeth. Something new for you to consider. He circled wide, drawing the creature's attention away from the retreating Asterians. As he moved, he analyzed its structure more carefully. What had appeared to be scales from a distance were actually interlocking plates, like tectonic fragments assembled into biological armor. Where they joined, narrow seams were visible, potential vulnerabilities. The creature pivoted to follow Jack's movement, surprisingly agile for its size. It made no aggressive move, simply observing. Jack took this as encouragement and moved closer, now within the shadow of its massive form. Heat radiated from it in palpable waves, making the air shimmer and distort. Closing to within 100 meters, practically touching distance for something of this size, Jack could see what the scanners had missed. At the center of its chest, partially obscured by overlapping plates, pulsed a core of pure energy. Not biological or mechanical, but something in between, like crystallized lightning. That's your heart, Jack realized aloud. Or your power source, at least. The creature lowered its head, bringing one enormous eye level with Jack's position. The pupil contracted, focusing on him with unnerving intensity. Jack held his ground, though every instinct screamed for retreat. We don't have to fight, Jack said, knowing his words meant nothing to the creature but hoping his non-threatening posture might. We can find another way. For a moment, it seemed to be working. The creature remained still, studying Jack with what appeared to be genuine curiosity. Then, from behind him, came the distinctive whine of an Asterian phase disruptor powering up. Jack whirled to see Commander Thalos, who had not retreated with the others, aiming a portable weapon at the creature. "Commander, no!" Too late. The beam lanced out, striking the creature's eye. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The creature reared back with a roar that shook the planet to its core, its wounded eye erupting in flames. It slammed one massive limb down, narrowly missing Commander Thalos, but creating a shockwave that threw her several meters. Jack was knocked off his feet as well, rolling to absorb the impact. When he regained his footing, the creature was in full rampage, its tail sweeping across the landscape and sending boulders flying like pebbles. One such projectile struck Commander Thalos, crushing her lower body beneath its weight. Without thinking, Jack ran to her, ducking under the creature's thrashing limbs. The commander was still conscious, purple blood seeping from multiple wounds. Her exoskeleton had partially protected her, but even Asterian physiology had its limits. "Foolish," she gasped, all four eyes focusing on Jack with difficulty. "Should have retreated." "So should you," Jack replied, trying to lift the boulder. Even with his enhanced strength from the gravity anchors, it barely moved. "Why did you stay?" "To observe your method," she admitted, curious if human approach would succeed. "It was working until you shot it in the eye," Jack grunted, shifting his position for better leverage. "Tactical assessment," the commander wheezed. "Confirmed vulnerability in sensory organ." Jack gave up on moving the boulder and instead assessed her injuries. The lower portion of her body was crushed beyond recovery, but Asterians could survive such trauma if their central nerve cluster remained intact. "I'm going to get you out of here," Jack promised, though he had no idea how to fulfill that promise with the creature still rampaging nearby. Commander Thalos seized his wrist with surprising strength. "No. Complete your mission. Neutralize the threat." "My mission was to make contact, not kill it." "Mission parameters. Evolved." The commander pressed something into his hand, a small device with Asterian markings. "Emergency beacon. Others will find me. You must stop the creature before it reaches the techronium core." Jack recognized the logic even as he resented it. If the creature absorbed the planet's techronium reserves, there would be no stopping it. It would grow beyond planetary scale, becoming a threat to the entire system. "I'll come back for you," Jack said, activating the beacon. "Unnecessary sentiment," Commander Thalos replied, her voice weakening. "But appreciated." Jack turned back to face the creature, which had finally noticed him again. Its wounded eye dripped molten material, and its movements had become erratic, driven by pain and rage. The curious intelligence he'd glimpsed earlier was gone, replaced by blind fury. Direct confrontation was suicide. Jack needed to be smarter, more strategic. He studied the terrain, noting a ridge of exposed rock that rose to approximately the height of the creature's chest. If he could reach that position, he might be able to access the energy core he'd glimpsed. The gravitational anchors on his boots had limited power reserves, originally designed for short repair operations rather than sustained use. Jack activated them to maximum output and sprinted toward the ridge, each step launching him forward with enhanced force. The creature tracked his movement and swung one massive limb to intercept him. Jack dove, the gravitational anchors pulling him to the ground with bone-jarring force, as the limb passed overhead with a sound like a spacecraft breaking atmosphere. He rolled to his feet and continued running, zigzagging to present a more difficult target. Reaching the base of the ridge, Jack began to climb. The gravitational anchors made it difficult, alternately pulling him against the rock face and propelling him upward with excessive force. He disengaged them, continuing the ascent with his natural strength, fingers finding purchase in narrow crevices. The creature circled the ridge, seemingly confused by Jack's change in tactics. It tested the rock formation with one limb, causing a minor avalanche but failing to dislodge the entire structure. Jack continued climbing, his muscles burning with exertion. The planet's heat making each breath a struggle, even through his breathing apparatus. Near the summit, the rock became unstable, crumbling beneath his hands. Jack scrambled for purchase, his feet dangling over a 100-meter drop. The creature noticed his vulnerability and reared back, preparing to strike. In that moment, Jack made a decision born of desperation and intuition. He let go. As he fell, he reactivated the gravitational anchors and oriented his body toward the creature's chest. The devices responded instantly, accelerating his descent but also pulling him toward the creature rather than the ground. It was like falling sideways, a controlled trajectory toward the energy core he'd identified. The creature, unprepared for this maneuver, failed to react in time. Jack slammed into its chest with the combined force of his fall and the gravitational anchor's enhancement. The impact should have killed him, but the creature's outer scales, while impervious to energy weapons, yielded slightly to kinetic force, like hitting extremely dense foam rather than solid metal. Jack's fingers found purchase between the scales, the gravity anchors helping him adhere to the vertical surface. The creature roared and tried to dislodge him, but its limbs couldn't reach the center of its own chest. Jack climbed higher, toward where he'd seen the energy core pulsing. The heat was unbearable now, the creature's body temperature far exceeding human tolerance. Jack's skin blistered, and his breathing apparatus began to malfunction, the plastic components softening. He had minutes at most before heat exposure would incapacitate him. Finally, he reached what appeared to be a seam between major scale plates, directly over where the energy core should be. The gap was narrow, barely wide enough for his hand, but it was his only chance. Jack disengaged one gravitational anchor and attached it to his right glove. "This is going to hurt," he muttered, then drove his enhanced fist into the gap with all his strength. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The scale plates separated slightly, revealing the pulsing energy core beneath, a crystalline structure that glowed with blue-white intensity. The creature thrashed violently, nearly dislodging Jack. He clung to the exposed edge of one scale, his left hand burning on contact with the superheated material. With no time for finesse or second thoughts, Jack drove his enhanced fist directly into the exposed core. The crystalline structure resisted briefly, then fractured under the concentrated force. Energy discharged in all directions, engulfing Jack's arm in what felt like liquid lightning. The creature froze, a tremor running through its entire massive form. Jack struck again, driving deeper into the fractured core. More energy discharged, now so intense it was visible as arcs of blue-white light spreading across the creature's body, following the seams between scales. With a final, desperate effort, Jack closed his fist around what felt like a solid nucleus within the energy core and crushed it with the gravitational anchor's enhanced strength. The nucleus shattered, releasing a pulse of energy that knocked Jack free from the creature's chest. He fell, unable to control his descent, the gravitational anchors either depleted or damaged by the energy discharge. The ground rushed up to meet him, promising a quick, if messy end to his improvised mission. Instead, something caught him mid-fall, a flexible appendage that hadn't been visible before, extending from the creature's underside. It deposited him roughly, but safely on the ground, then retracted. Jack looked up in confusion. The creature stood motionless, energy still arcing across its form. Then, with glacial slowness, cracks began to appear in its outer scales, spreading outward from the damaged core. Light shone through the cracks, not the blue-white of its energy core, but a golden radiance that seemed somehow more natural. "What the hell?" Jack whispered, backing away as the cracks widened. The creature made no sound as it began to disintegrate, scales crumbling into fine dust that hung suspended in the air. Within minutes, its entire massive form had dissolved, leaving only a glittering cloud that slowly dispersed on the hot winds of Helios 7. Jack stood transfixed, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. Had he killed the creature, or merely transformed it? The deliberate way it had placed him on the ground before disintegrating suggested the latter. A movement caught his eye, one larger fragment of scale, perhaps 2 meters across, tumbling to the ground near his position. Unlike the rest of the creature's remains, this piece remained solid, its surface etched with patterns that resembled writing. Before Jack could examine it more closely, the ground beneath his feet lurched violently. The creature's destruction had apparently destabilized the planet's already fragile crust. Fissures opened across the landscape, spewing molten material from the planet's core. Jack activated Commander Thalos's emergency beacon, increasing its signal strength. Then, he ran toward her last position, navigating the increasingly treacherous terrain. The boulder that had crushed her was still visible, but the commander was gone. Drag marks in the dust suggested she had been retrieved, hopefully by the surviving Asterian soldiers, rather than some previously undetected threat. With no way to confirm her fate and the planet literally coming apart beneath him, Jack changed course toward the mining complex. It was his only chance for shelter until rescue could arrive. The journey was nightmarish. What had been relatively stable ground hours earlier was now a hellscape of earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. The gravitational anchors, partially recharged after their moment of inactivity, helped Jack leap across widening chasms, but drained quickly with each use. He reached the mining complex to find it largely abandoned. A few bodies lay where they had fallen, miners caught in the initial attacks or subsequent earthquakes. Jack made his way to the central control room, which had been designed to withstand seismic activity. Inside, he found Dr. Cortez and 3 Asterian soldiers, along with a dozen miners of various species. They had established an emergency shelter, sealing the control room against the increasingly toxic atmosphere outside. "Jackhammer!" Dr. Cortez exclaimed when he staggered through the airlock. "We thought you were dead." "Almost was," Jack managed, collapsing into a chair. His left hand was severely burned, and heat exposure had left his skin blistered across much of his body. "The creature?" "Destroyed," reported one of the Asterian soldiers. "Our sensors detected its energy signature dissipating approximately 27 minutes ago." "Commander Thalos." "Retrieved by our emergency response team," the soldier replied. "Her condition is critical but stable. The Nova Vanguard is dispatching additional shuttles for evacuation, but planetary conditions are making approach difficult." Jack nodded wearily. "How many made it out?" Dr. Cortez's expression grew somber. "From the mining colony? Less than 30%. The initial attack and subsequent tectonic events caused catastrophic casualties." The number hit Jack like a physical blow. Thousands dead. Despite his success in neutralizing the creature, he hadn't been fast enough, or smart enough, to prevent the collateral damage. "There was nothing more you could have done," Dr. Cortez said quietly, reading his expression. "Without your intervention, the death toll would have been total." Jack wasn't convinced, but argument required energy he no longer possessed. He allowed Dr. Cortez to treat his injuries while they awaited evacuation, the control room shuddering with each new earthquake. 6 hours later, they were aboard the Nova Vanguard, leaving the Helios system behind. Jack watched from the medical bay viewport as Helios 7's surface glowed red-hot, the planet tearing itself apart in the aftermath of the creature's demise. Admiral Gentok visited him personally, an unprecedented honor for a human engineer. The Admiral's expression was unreadable, but his formal posture suggested respect. "Engineer Reyes," he began, "Commander Thalos has provided her report of your actions on Helios 7. Jack tensed, expecting criticism or even disciplinary action for his unorthodox approach. "Sir, I take full responsibility for your immediate promotion to strategic consultant," the admiral continued, ignoring Jack's attempt to speak. "The Asterian High Command has reviewed the data and determined that your methodology, while unconventional, demonstrated exceptional initiative and effectiveness." Jack blinked in surprise. "Thank you, Admiral, but I don't feel I deserve promotion. Thousands died." "Yes," Admiral Gentok acknowledged. "A regrettable outcome. However, analysis indicates that without your intervention, the creature would have absorbed sufficient techronium to achieve interplanetary capability. The potential casualties would have been incalculable." Jack said nothing, still processing the implications. The Admiral studied him for a moment, then added, "There is also the matter of the artifact you discovered." "Artifact?" "The scale fragment that did not disintegrate. It appears to be composed of unknown materials and bears markings consistent with a form of written language. Dr. Cortez is quite excited about the research possibilities." Jack recalled the large fragment he had seen fall just before the planet began to break apart. "I didn't recover it. It was left on the surface. A secondary team was dispatched to retrieve it after your evacuation," the Admiral explained. "It is now secured in our research laboratory. Initial analysis suggests it may contain information about the creature's origins or purpose." "Purpose?" Jack repeated. "You believe it was sent deliberately? Not just a natural phenomenon?" Admiral Gentok's upper eyes narrowed slightly. "That remains to be determined. However, the precision of its attacks and its focus on techronium deposits suggest more than random destruction." The Admiral departed, leaving Jack with more questions than answers. In the days that followed, as the Nova Vanguard returned to Asterion Prime, he found himself increasingly preoccupied with the memory of his brief connection with the creature, the way it had saved him from falling, even as it disintegrated, the golden light that had replaced its destructive energy. Commander Thalos survived her injuries, though she would require extensive cybernetic replacements for her lower body. When Jack visited her in the medical bay, he was surprised to find her attitude toward him had shifted from professional tolerance to something approaching respect. "The Admiralty is impressed with your performance," she told him. "There is discussion of creating a new tactical division specifically to analyze and implement human methodologies." Jack shook his head. "I'm not interested in becoming a military consultant. Commander, I joined this mission as an engineer, and that's still what I am." "Yet you demonstrated aptitude beyond engineering," she countered. "Your approach to the creature was unexpected, effective where our conventional tactics failed." "I got lucky," Jack insisted, "and thousands still died. That's not a victory in my book." Commander Thalos studied him with all four eyes. "Your species places unusual emphasis on preventing all casualties, an admirable but often impractical standard." "It's called humanity," Jack replied. "It's why we're human." Upon reaching Asterion Prime, Jack was surprised to receive a communication from Earth Central Command. Captain Wright delivered the message personally to his quarters. "They're offering you a commendation," she explained. "The Nova Star, for exceptional service beyond expected duty." Jack set the formal document aside without reading it. "Not interested." Wright sighed. "I thought you might say that. There's something else. The Educational Division is looking for instructors for the new joint Asterion Earth Academy. Engineering focus. Emphasis on practical problem solving." This caught Jack's attention. "Teaching?" "You'd be good at it," Wright said. "God knows you've got the practical experience, and it would keep you off the front lines, which I'm guessing is something you want after Helios 7. Jack considered the possibility. Teaching engineering to the next generation of space explorers, human and alien alike. Passing on knowledge rather than participating in more destruction. It had a certain appeal. "I'll think about it," he promised. "Good. Because I already accepted the position on your behalf. Wright grinned at his expression. You can thank me later. 3 months later, Jack stood before his first class at the newly established Asterian Earth Joint Academy. The classroom was filled with a diverse array of species, humans, Asterians, and representatives from a dozen other spacefaring civilizations, all watching him expectantly. Engineering isn't just about building things, he began. It's about solving problems. Sometimes with the tools you have. Sometimes with the tools you have to invent on the spot. As he spoke, his gaze was drawn to a display case near the classroom entrance. Inside, suspended in a stasis field, was a fragment of iridescent material, a piece of the scale that had been recovered from Helios 7th. The Academy had received it as a gift from the Asterian High Command, a symbol of the cooperation that had neutralized a grave threat. But Jack knew it was more than that. It was a reminder that some problems couldn't be solved with force alone, that understanding was sometimes more powerful than destruction. The patterns etched into its surface had been partially translated, not a language exactly, but a mathematical sequence that Dr. Cortez believed represented star coordinates. Coordinates to what? No one yet knew. But the Asterian Earth Alliance was already planning an expedition to find out, this time with humans as equal partners rather than junior members. Engineer Reyes, one of the students, a young Asterian with bright, curious eyes, raised a hand. Is it true that you defeated the Mars beast with your bare hands? Jack smiled slightly. The story had grown in the telling, as stories tend to do. Not exactly. I had some help from gravity anchors, good timing, and more than a little luck. But you approached it alone, the student persisted. When conventional weapons had failed, why? Jack considered the question, thinking back to that moment of decision on Helios 7th. Because sometimes the direct approach isn't about force, it's about connection, understanding your problem before you try to solve it. As the class continued, Jack glanced again at the scale fragment. For just a moment, he thought he saw it pulse with golden light, like a distant star signaling across the void of space. A reminder, perhaps, that some encounters were not endings, but beginnings. Somewhere out there, the entity that had been the Mars beast might still exist in some form, transformed rather than destroyed. And someday, humanity and the Asterian Alliance might be ready to understand it, rather than fear it. Until then, Jack would teach what he had learned, that the universe's greatest challenges required more than technology or firepower. They required the courage to face the unknown with an open mind, and the wisdom to recognize when not to fight. The scale fragment would remain as testimony to that lesson, a bridge between what had been and what might yet be. A reminder that even in the vastness of space, the choices of individuals could shape the destiny of civilizations. And sometimes, those choices began with a single, decisive action, like a human standing alone before a planet-sized beast, refusing to accept that strength could only be met with greater strength. Sometimes it began with understanding,